couple of years ago, when I came back to the States, in the middle of the explosion of the psychedelic revolution, I noticed that some people were putting down Timothy Leary, someone who I love dearly, as a ploy. And these people didn't know Timothy Leary, yet they were talking about him and saying that he was the one who let the genie out of the bottle and all the ills of the bad trips and all these things that happened of the 60s related to psychedelics were Tim Leary's fault. And I've got a great story for you that shows a different side of the situation. It was the day of John Lilly's birthday, and his daughter and his goddaughter Chrissy decided to throw a big party for him at the Lilly Pad. And I went to the Lilly Pad with Ray Villalobos, the famous director and cinematographer, and Robyn Wright, and we went to visit John at his house. And there were many people. There was an extravagant affair. There were people on trapeze swings in the living room. It was quite wild at the Lilly Pad. And just as we got there, we ran into Timothy Leary, and he said the line to me that almost everybody says to me is probably the most popular line I hear in my life. He was like, "I thought you were dead." Well, I'm not dead. I'm here, still alive. And Tim said to us, let's all go downstairs to John Lilly's bedroom and congratulate John on his birthday. I didn't know there was going to turn into a story of Alice in Wonderland with Robyn Wright as Alice and Ray Villalobos I saw as the hookah smoking caterpillar and me as the hare going to see the Mad Hatter, which was John Lilly. And we went downstairs into John's room, and the first thing that hit me was all the walls in the room were covered in Hustler magazine centerfolds. So it was a little bit shocking, and there was John looking like the living dead in his bedroom with two naked, very young groupies in bed with him. On the treadmill was Laura Huxley, Aldous Huxley's last wife, slowly walking on the treadmill as we were talking. And the conversation began with John in a rant about how he's had migraine headaches for 8 years now and he can't get rid of them. And I said to him, well, maybe you should stop shooting vitamin K for a while and see what happened. And as was my relationship with John, he started calling me a primitive and an idiot, and me and my Indians don't know anything, and pure drugs are the only way to go, and all this other native stuff is just primitive and nowhere near the level of Anglo science and all this. So I turned to Tim and I said, Tim, it's always been curious to me that your whole experience, the whole psychedelic revolution started when you saw Gordon Wasson's article in Life magazine and you went down to Cuernavaca, Mexico and took some sacred mushrooms, and days later you wrote the psychedelic experience, and thus the 60s happened. Why at that point did you take up an East Indian thing instead of delving into the amazing culture of Mexico, and particularly the Mazatecans and the mushrooms? And he smiled at me, lit a cigarette, and said, that's a funny question, but the truth is, I was a guy who came out of the world of chemistry. I came out of a time when we believed chemicals would solve all the problems of the world. What you're talking about is more anthropology, which was not my interest. And the truth was, it was Richard Albert who went to India and did the Baba Ram Das thing, and he gave me some shirts and beads, but that was never my focus. My focus was always chemistry. And John Lilly jumped in and started to say, You see, it's all about the chemistry. You're an idiot. You've wasted your life in the jungle with these natives and all. But then Laura Huxley chimed in and said, you know, my husband Aldous, he believed that psychedelics were only for the wealthy and the elite and common people shouldn't take them. But in later years, I learned that all these things started with indigenous people, not the rich, not the elite. So in a way, as Timothy Leary jumped in and Robyn, they're like, well, then we've hijacked this from the native people. And I said, well, maybe it's time to correct that. But John wasn't seeing it at all. And Ray was just shaking his head at the unbelievable situation of sitting in this room with the Hustler magazines, him fooling around in bed, covered with sores from all the times you stuck needles in him and God knows what else, and believing that this chemical vitamin K, if he just keeps whacking it, that he's going to get to another place, which he obviously didn't get to. And so what I'm talking about in this story is we've entered a new age, and everybody's saying that Timothy Leary was the one who let the genie out of the bottle, but now we have psychonauts and scientists, and we're not going to let that happen. Well, I have to laugh, because with all the giant summer festivals we have, where many people are taking 12 different types of drugs and psychedelics a day, the genie is far, 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 far out of the bottle. In fact, the bottle's gone. And we have to start dealing with that situation, that we're in a time that we have this amazing gift. And this gift can do two things. On one level, people at Johns Hopkins and all have realized that psychedelics can help people with their problems and neuroses and traumas from civilization. Everything from cancer to fear of death to manic depression. There's many things that psychedelics have helped individuals. But I'd like to go back to the original use of psychedelics, or as I would like to say a difference, entheogenic plants, what indigenous people use for sacraments. Because I believe why we're helping ourselves individually to get healthy or maintain, that's maintaining. The key to our situation is recovering our relationship and communication with nature. And I believe the entheogenic plants used correctly in rituals that indigenous people have taken thousands of years to perfect. I hear a lot of people say, well, you know, we have friends who are scientists and they tell us, you know, to take different drugs with the psychedelics and do this to them so you don't feel this effect or you don't go through uneasy periods, where indigenous people know it's all part of the experience. And without that full experience, we will give up a great gift that can help us reestablish our bridge of communication with nature. To me, the most important thing happening on the planet today, because that is our biggest problem. We do not communicate with nature. We listen to people who spent their entire youth away from nature watching Star Trek, and the information, if you listen to them, that they're giving us are basically old episodes of Star Trek, which was a great show, but it's not reality, people. In nature, the very people we are destroying in the Javari, in the Alto Siapa, and the Alto Orinoco, Ocamo, where I spent a great deal of time, these people, without thought, totally know how to communicate with nature in a way we can't even conceive of at this point. We are killing off, especially in Brazil and many other places, the very people and plants that can reestablish our communication with nature so we can survive. Our thread in the weave will withstand, and we will have a future. So to my dear loved Timothy Leary, who I really believe was an incredible human, he made mistakes, but he was the one who pioneered and took that dangerous step forward for all of humanity and pulled it off. With great love to you, Tim, Ninashkata Chili, the gods give to those who give to the gods.